Let's move on to the blend game this week. We are playing a really difficult one.
Gary Goldman.
Gary Goldman blend. I'll go first because my choice is probably unusual, and it's really hard because he is in so many amazing films and is really great in so many amazing films. I'm going with Sirius Black, The Prisoner of Azkaban.
Yeah, it's the best Harry Potter movie.
I saw that got suggested, and the thing is, yes, it's absolutely the best Harry Potter movie because it's Alfonso, because it's one of the best of the books as well too, and it's the first time that the franchise matured and figured out what it could be, and I think elevated away from just a once every other year. Like it elevated away from what Fantastic Beasts is right now, which is a forgettable franchise, to something noteworthy and artistic, and it took the next level. But people also forget, people who had read the books, how important the character of Sirius Black was, and to get the casting of him correct was really, really difficult because, spoiler alert for this however long old story, you think that he's the villain. You think that he's the bad guy the entire time. And Gary Oldman is perfect for that. Like, you're not supposed to trust him. Even when he reveals to Harry their connection and the fact that he's essentially working on his side, you almost don't know if you can believe it. And Gary Oldman is so perfect for that. So while I think he's been incredible in so many other films, my favorite film of his is that because it's my favorite Harry Potter film. I think that he's tremendous casting as Sirius Black. When he does finally sell the fact that I'm on your side, I've been on your side this whole time, I've been watching out for you this entire time, it's a sympathetic version of Gary Oldman that we don't get to see that often. Like, he gets asked to play hard-edged guys or sinister guys, and he becomes very warm and very paternal almost because he's so committed to Harry's mother and father and wants to look out for their son who's been left behind. And Oldman sells it because he's fucking amazing and he's Gary Oldman. And so I love that we get to see that aspect of him because I don't think he gets to play it that often. And unfortunately, I think for the rest of the series, he got relegated, not to the sidelines, but every time they pulled out a new Harry Potter movie, they had other big characters that they had to introduce. And so then he just became like Uncle Sirius, who was kind of around and helping.
Like a cameo, like in the later films.
Yeah, a little bit. And so Azkaban really gave him his moment to shine, and he was phenomenal in it. And I'm going to use this opportunity to also talk about the scene in Azkaban that Quaron just absolutely nails, which is Harry conjuring the Patronus for the very first time to protect himself from the demons that are coming down to storm him, but at that point believing that it was his father who was going to show up. Like, he's like, only my dad would be strong enough to show up and chase these things away. And he's standing there waiting for the dad to show up, and then finally he's just like, fuck it, I got to do this myself. And he goes running out and he conjures with Patronus, and of course you realize through the course of time he was watching himself do it. And it's an amazing moment in the book. And when I went into that movie, I was like, there's no way possible they're going to be able to pull that off. Like, it has such an emotional heft to it. And Quaron, because we didn't really know how great Quaron was just yet, he nails it. And it's a tremendous, tremendous, tremendous movie.
Did Harry Potter do Tenet before Tenet did Tenet?
He might have actually done it. Oh, and then he brought Neil in for the next movie. So I think that Robert Pattinson might be playing in Goblet of Fire. It's the Tenet character. So that's my pick. Kevin, you're up.
For me, so just to get it out of the way, yeah, True Romance would have been my pick, clearly just because of the initial confrontation scene that he has with Christian Slater when he's playing the Mac on his television, the Richard Pryor film, and just that whole sequence, that whole fight was just amazing. Also, Oldman's scene earlier in the film with Samuel L. Jackson is great too. So that would have been my ultimate choice because I think Drexel is definitely I think that might be the most. I don't know. I mean, you can go to Hannibal too, but that might be the most disappearing I've seen Gary Oldman do in a role. I mean, I think Drexel is so outside of who Gary Oldman is, but just the makeup and the hair. But I mean, I know, Jake, we talk about Hannibal sometimes. He played what's his name?
Mason Verger.
Mason Verger. I mean, that was
one of Hannibal's earliest victims.
I mean, but he wasn't.
And also, don't forget Churchill.
Yeah. Churchill was good.
I want to point out one quick thing too, because right after our show dropped, somebody on social media was like, Gary Oldman blend, like shared it right away. And the person underneath it was like, oh, it's Drexel. Like, put a Drexel gif. And then another person, like a third person was like, they said don't pick Drexel. And I was like, wow, you guys are really...
Yeah. Jesus.
Yeah. All right, we did
it's okay.
say
You can pick Drexel.
Yeah, you can if you want to.
Yeah, and Drexel is my ultimate pick. So if that aside, I went with The Professional only because I feel like that is one of the greatest performances of all time. I mean, here's the thing, and this kind of goes to this idea that the character is a sadistic, horrifically horrible person. But Gary Oldman finds a way to make him entertaining for an audience in a really sadistic, weird way. What I mean by that is like when he says like the everyone line, right? I mean, that is so over the top and ridiculous. Yeah. But what he's doing in that scene is so ridiculously terrible and horrifying. I mean, he murders her entire family, and then she goes up to the door and meets, you know, and meets the professional.
I never doubted that guy would say it like that.
Yeah, and I think there was just something about the theatrics of the way that character worked, the way he would like walk into a room. Again, horrible individual, but it's the same reason why we watch films like Pulp Fiction and we kind of go along for the ride with Samuel L. Jackson's character or John Travolta. They're murderers, they're hitmen, they're killing people, but we are entertained by them, by their discussions or the way they act or the way they move. You know, it's the reason why we laugh when Marvin gets shot in the face in the car. It's a tone thing. It's not, we're not saying that the characters themselves are good people. We're saying that the entertainment comes from the way it's portrayed. Professional's a dark film. Horrifically dark film. A great story, and I think Natalie Portman's performance is brilliant in it. But Gary Oldman is so menacing and so disturbing. It's like, it's hard to explain it. Like when you have a character who's a villain that you want to see more on screen because the actor is so good at bringing the villain to life that it creates this strange sense of, like when I watched Black Panther, for example, I wanted more Killmonger. He's the villain of the movie, but the character was so over the top and like very emotional, but also played into some very entertaining ideas in the way he did things. I find that to be a strange thing as an audience member.
I want to bring this up too, because I would love to break down when actors choose to over the top it versus when they underplay it. And I'm saying like a Nick Cage doing Castor Troy or Gary Oldman in The Professional.
Castor Troy's a perfect example of a villain that we are entertained by. That's a great example.
And both actors get the chance to ham it up when they are him. But I don't think, and having just rewatched Black Panther, I don't think Michael B. Jordan ever over the tops it. You know, he kind of underplays it a lot of times.
There's some moments where he plays into the theatrics of it, kind of in the beginning, specifically when they're stealing the vibranium and he runs in the car and kisses his girlfriend, like overly kisses her. Like there were aspects of his performance, or like when he walks in and says, "What's up, Auntie?" Like there were like elements of the way he did things in the film that were a bit more, in my opinion,
is this your king? That's the best. God.
Those are a little more theatrical. Those are a little more like you have a villain taking a front stage and kind of doing something more theatrical with the performance. Now, again, Black Panther and Killmonger is not even in the same boat as like Gary Oldman's character in Professional, because there's two different storylines going on. I was just kind of coming at it from the angle of there are ways that villains become entertaining in films, and I find it interesting. Like Silence of the Lambs. I mean, I don't even know if you would consider Anthony Hopkins the villain in that film, but you still find him entertaining. Yeah. We enjoy his presence on screen, even though he eats people. And I find that to be a very interesting thing as an audience member, that we can engage with horrible people on an entertaining level. Castor Troy is probably one of the greatest examples you could possibly bring up. Drexel, another great example. Horrible person, but entertaining to watch. So his character in The Professional, it's funny, I almost went with The Fifth Element as well. Just over-the-top, eccentric characters that are villain-esque, I guess, if you want to put it in that regard. So Professional to me is just that perfect through line of a story that I love, but I also love when he shows up in the movie, even though he's a bad person. And to me, I think Oldman just plays it on a theatrical level that makes it more entertaining, but the tone of the film still stays within its limits. And I think that's kind of a cool thing that he does as a performance. So that's my pick.
Great choice. Jakey?
I chose this.
Jake, I saw you look at me just now when I mentioned something.
Oh, God.
Yeah,
look at that.
I went with Mason Verger from Hannibal.
On YouTube, folks.
By the
Jake
way,
is showing us a photo of Mason
I
Verger.
love how Jake played that off because I said, who's the character he played in Hannibal? And Jake was like, was it Mason Verger? Like, you already knew that. Is it Mason Verger?
Yeah, I mean, this is this is an example of a guy who's already the ball's already been brought to the red zone, but he takes it and brings it in for the touchdown. I mean, like the makeup. Obviously,
more football references,
like,
Jake. That's what the show
needed.
Welcome.
Exactly. The makeup obviously is a massive impact. Has a massive impact when it comes to making Gary Oldman disappear. If you don't know what I'm talking about, Mason Verger is in the movie Hannibal, which is the Silence of the Lambs sequel directed by Ridley Scott, and he plays a man who, at the instruction of Hannibal Lecter, while they're having what's, if I remember right, like a very kind of like a sexual moment. Mm-hmm. In the moment, like they shatter a mirror, and Hannibal Lecter basically tells him to cut off his own face and feed it to the dogs.
God.
And so the whole movie, he is in basically in a hospital bed talking. He's like a multimillionaire, and he's talking to Julianne Moore, who now plays Clarice Starling. But it's not just the makeup. It would be easy. Like any actor could have that makeup put on them and then just like give a pretty cool performance, and it would make them look good.
It's like Charlize Theron in Monster. Like she owns the performance under the makeup.
He takes that. I mean, I love showing that picture to people and saying, "Do you know who that is?" And then people are like, "No," and I'm like, "That's Gary Oldman." They're like, "No." Like I love revealing to people that that's Gary Oldman. And in fact, whenever I got to interview Gary Oldman for Darkest Hour. And of course, the makeup brought up a great opportunity to talk about the. I got to talk about Mason Verger, which I loved. But that just even if he weren't buried under that makeup, it's still like a weirdly haunting performance. In the same way with like what Ted Levine did with Buffalo Bill in Signs of the Lambs. The fact that like Hannibal Lecter can be in a movie and not be the creepiest person in the movie is astounding. And it happened, I think, with Buffalo Bill, and I think it happens with Mason Verger and Hannibal.
Yeah, the Buffalo Bill, no question, is
like
the
Ted
most
Levine
disturbing.
is great.
Yeah.
So Mason Verger, he's an incredible villain, but just it's a perfect example of Gary Oldman basically being handed like a gift and saying like, hey, like here's 98% of your performance right here with the makeup, and him going, no, like I'm gonna take it further. Like that makeup's not good enough for me, and he takes it and turns it up to 11, and it makes it like the makeup makes him better, but he makes the makeup better, and it's the perfect marriage of an actor not just using the makeup to like carry him in. He takes it and really runs with it.
I do want to say this, and I think that's a great example of him. I think Jake makes a great point about that because the makeup could have been a crutch, right? It could have been something he just hid behind. I'm only going to mention this because it is probably the worst movie I've ever seen, and I've mentioned it on the show before.
Yeah.
But Gary Oldman's is in a movie called Tiptoes, and it is
I've never seen it.
It is horrifically offensive, and probably next to Battlefield Earth, the worst movie I've ever seen in my life.
What is the story? Because it's got good people in it. What is the story behind this movie?
I feel like we need to watch it.
Here's the thing. Years ago, Gary Oldman was my favorite actor for a long time. I think he might still be next to DiCaprio, just from like a performance standpoint. But there was a time period where I was going through all of his work. I did this in high school with Benicio del Toro. I was going through all the... Do you remember, it's a random film of Del Toro's that I watched because I was doing the same thing, was Swimming with Sharks, which I had never seen before, with Kevin Spacey and...
Oh gosh, he's in that?
Yeah, I believe so, if I remember correctly. But so going back to Gary Oldman, I was going through his list, and I'm like, okay, yeah, I want to see Dracula. I want to make sure I see, all these films that he's been in, Sid and Nancy. And then I see Tiptoes. And then my friends in college were like, my two buddies in college were like, we should get that movie and rent it because it looks really bad. This must have been 7 or 8 years ago. I don't remember the story. All I remember is sitting there and I own it. I actually own the film. It's in my collection over here.
I want to see it. I really want to see it.
Let me pull it out.
No. I mean, I want to watch the movie is what
I know, but let me at least pull out Tiptoes at least. Hold on. Here it is. Look at this.
Who is it? Kate Beckinsale, Matthew McConaughey.
Okay, so Gary Oldman, Kate Beckinsale, Patricia Arquette, Matthew McConaughey. It is hands down, and I will say this right now, is one of the worst movies I've ever seen, and it's incredibly offensive. But if you want to see something really bad, it's not so bad. It's good. It's just it's bad, like really bad. But it's horrible.
Gary Oldman.
Gary Oldman.
Well, no one picked Tiptoes for their audience picks.
We can end our show with Tiptoes if you guys want.
Tiptoes!
Tiptoes!
But Evan Rook said Harry Potter and the Prisoner of Azkaban. Denise Red went with Mason Verger in Hannibal. Titanic 2.
Titanic 2.
Lee Patton said Tinker Tailor Soldier Spy. Kim Mason
I gotta be
Jr.
honest, I've never been able to make it all the way through that movie. I've tried multiple times.
Jake and I fell asleep twice. Jake,
both times I tried watching it, I fell asleep.
Me too. Jake and I interviewed Martin Scorsese for Hugo, and then we had spent all day doing interviews for Young Adult and Hugo. And Jake and I were on like this crazy high from interviewing Martin Scorsese after being there all day. And then we went and saw Tinker Tailor Soldier Spy before the junket, and we both fell asleep. And I
didn't even get to the Tinker.
It's very slow moving. It's very slow moving.
I didn't review the film because I never watched it. I actually felt unethical about reviewing it. So I tried to watch it again based on a screener so I could review it, and I couldn't make it through it.
Do you remember there was, when we did that junket, there was an actor who was running like 30 minutes late and was 2 floors up, and they're like, hey, do you want to wait around and get this actor? And I was like, no, I don't even know who this guy is, and like I gotta go to the airport, and like I probably could have waited 30 minutes, but I didn't. I was like, no, I gotta go. I don't even I'm not gonna use him for my piece. I got Gary Oldman, I got Colin Firth, I'm good. It was Benedict Cumberbatch.
Wait, was it?
Yeah.
That's
I
great.
don't think I was even offered that. Who was he at that point?
No one.
Really. No one. Yeah.
He wasn't Sherlock yet.
I don't think so.
All right. Kim Mason Jr. says Sid Vicious in Sid Nancy.
Oh, yeah.
Danny Gertsch. Okay, so this is the other one I almost went with. Danny Gertsch said JFK. He's amazing in JFK.
Yeah.
Oh, God, he's so good. And then Harry Lichtman and many, many others went with Commissioner Gordon in the Dark Knight trilogy.
Jim Gordon.
Yeah, a little surprised we didn't go that way.